Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with Tony Curran, who plays King James I in the Starz limited series Mary and George. It's quite a sexy thrill ride of a historical drama, Tony. So, what was it like to bring this historical figure from the 17th century that we didn't really know everything about? I mean, I certainly learned a lot through this.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, thank you for watching it. No, it's interesting. When I first heard about it, I auditioned for it, and I was fortunate enough to be offered the role by Oliver and uh, Liza, our beautiful producer at Hera Pictures. Um, I did a play years ago called Mary Queen of Scots Got Her Head Chopped Off. It was a play by a woman called Liz Lockhead about Mary Queen of Scots, who was King James's mother. And in that play, I played King James's father, Lord Darnley, who unfortunately got assassinated, got blown up. So I knew a little bit about his history and about, unfortunately, he never really had a mother because she was taken away by Queen Elizabeth. And I was a baby, and she was imprisoned there before she was executed. So, having your mother decapitated and your father assassinated, it was a bit of a tough start for old King James.
Wow.
So, I think, but I learned a lot about James's past through talking to Benjamin Woolley, who wrote the novel The King's Assassin, which our show, which Mary and George is based on. So I just there's a lot of letters between between George and James, correspondence, uh, romantic love letters, you might say, compassionate um, sort of connection they had, and I've read a lot of those as well, which is very informative, and just sort of the idea that this guy, the writer I spoke to, David, who wrote the screenplay, DC Moore. We were at a panel in London, and he said, why isn't he that well known? And there was a few things I thought of, but I guess he had the balls to say it. Being a Scotsman, he's like, oh, why wasn't he that well known? Because a lot of it was to do with bringing a Scot down and putting him on an English throne. Certainly at that time, 1603 was a bit of a contentious decision, especially when Queen Elizabeth, who executed my mother, before she died, apparently, they said, oh, by the way, the guy who's gonna, who's gonna become king after you have gone is the son of the woman you executed. So I'm sure I don't think she was very happy about that, but it came to pass that King James the Sixth of Scotland, first of England, became the first of England. But no, just the guy's sort of just he was just very human. I think he wanted to have I think being brought up by a lot of these regents like Buchanan and Lennox. Well, Lennox he had a relationship with, but a lot of these other characters like Lord Buchanan, it was a very sort of male dominated world, and they all wanted a piece of him. He was the head of state. He was this powerful monarch, and if you were friends with him or if you were aligned with him, you would have you'd be powerful. You'd be safe. You'd be safe. So I guess a lot of his journey, a lot of the vulnerability, I I read up and I talked to Benjamin Woolley about that, and well, hopefully we portray some of that in the show, because there's elements of a love story of lasciviousness, the sexuality of it as well. But it's also about a man who maybe doesn't really want to be where he is, and he tries to lose himself through the arts and through his sort of lovemaking and sexual desires as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And Julianne Moore and Nicholas Galitzine play Mary and George Villiers, this mother and son duo who really rise through the ranks of society because Mary basically pimps her gorgeous son out for all he's worth, and he ends up
Yeah.
seducing the king. Were you familiar with those two before you shot this? Because they're
No,
Westminster
no.
Abbey, correct?
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, no, totally, absolutely correct. I wasn't aware of Mary or children Villiers at all, or George. But yeah, they're both buried in Westminster Abbey next to King James. Um, Apparently, when you were betrothed, or when you were given that maybe became Duke and Duchess, you normally had to be already part of a royal society, or but the Villiers were like lowly status aristocracy. So when King James bestowed upon them the Duke and Duchess of Buckingham, he sort of broke sort of president quite 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 heavily there. He wasn't supposed to do that, but he's when you're the king, you can, I guess, you can do what you like, and he did do what he liked, and he bestowed that upon them. But yeah, no, it's just, I think Mary Villiers, her story, she has that line: "If I looked like you, I'd rule the fucking planet," and of course she's saying that about the fact that he's also handsome, but also in the sense, I think, if I looked like you, in the sense, if I was a man, because she's a canny woman, she's smart and she's wise and she's ambitious, but at the same time she's a woman, and unfortunately at that time, a lot of women didn't have any woman had any sort of agency or any sort of power. So the, uh, the fact that the story has never really been told is, I think, is incredible, really, because for a woman at that time, 16th, 17th century, to rise up through the ranks to become what she became and to look after her family was, it was nothing short of incredible, really.
And Julianne does such a great job of, I mean, she sort of does despicable things, but like you watching it, like I just loved her the whole time. The whole time I just want her to win,
Yeah,
even though she's kind of awful.
no,
And I
totally.
think that's a
Yeah.
credit to Julianne.
Yeah, no, I mean, she does do these. There's that moment where the lovely Neve Elgar, who there's Mary and Sandy, her lover, and they've just they're giving the prunes to the chap, and he's choking in front of them, and he's like, she's like, "Have you ever seen a man die before?" And she's like, "Yes," and she remembers back to her moment with her husband, but yeah, maybe it's not very nice, but neither was her husband. He wasn't very nice either, beating her and sort of and yeah, and I guess it appeared to be a dog eat dog world, as it were. But no, there was never any point where you were like, "Oh, she's a terrible woman." There was, obviously, she had some, um, you know, she definitely had some ambition, and but if you got in her way, you obviously might not be around for too long, as the sort of the Overbury figure in Robert Somerset, and my other sort of um, King James's first lover that we meet, Robert Somerset. She sort of set that up as well and got rid of him quite. You know, she achieved that rather well. So, but no, I think I think all of us done a beautiful job. He's made it really sumptuous. Sort of, he always wanted to have this sort of punk-esque nature to it, and it's very sexy, very sensual. It doesn't tend to judge sexuality. It's like, okay, so you're fluid. You like men, great. You're a man. You like women. You like both. Have at it. Um, and I uh, I tend to think that's, if people want to express themselves in that way, then like King James did, then as long as you're not harming anyone, then I don't see I don't see what's wrong with it. And the irony that I think as well, that King James wrote the King James Bible, that he sort of that he translated from the Latin, And if you go around most hotels in the sort of Western world, America or Europe, when you open a drawer in your hotel, you may find that King James is not very far from you, you know?
Yeah. It's fascinating that the most popular Bible is dedicated to this king who was queer
Yeah.
and broke a lot of the commandments, I would say.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no. I mean, some of the sodomy laws at the time that he put forth, um, it was somewhat ironic. The punishment for this sodomizing behavior, but he was he was he was a big part of it, you know. But but uh, but yeah, no. I think that there's because the Victorian age came in, and uh, and apparently that I'm not sure if they're supposed to be more buttoned up and more frigid, or as it were. The Jacobean era was more sort of more relaxed, more. I'm not saying hedonistic, but it certainly seemed a little looser. Um, but yeah, there's so many sort of people just sort of the sexuality. People seem to put people in boxes where uh, well, I think King James, he didn't want to be put in a box. He wanted to be, he wanted to be free. He wanted to express who he was. Well, being the king, I guess you could do that.
Nicholas Galitzine, when you were filming this, he had done a few things, but he's really blown up since this came out with
Yeah.
the films and the TV shows he's been a part of since then. Do you sense that when you're working with someone, and how did you develop that chemistry? Because you guys had a really fun chemistry, it looked like.
Yeah, no, I guess sometimes when you do a job, it just, we didn't read with each other before it. Nick was obviously offered the role, and I auditioned for it. I don't know, maybe the director had a good vibe about us as actors, or as I never met all of them before, me and Nick were texting for a few weeks before I'd actually met him, because he was still doing still shooting on some other job that he had to do reshoots on or something. But we immediately had this sort of chemistry, very very funny, very silly, very fun, tongue-in-cheek jokes about what we're about to undertake, and and we just when we met each other, we seemed to get on. He's a very sort of a down to earth, funny, talented, lovely young man. So we just seemed to uh, relish the characters that we were playing, and sort of there was a real sort of I think at first the two of them have there's a sort of a salacious connection. Certainly with the king, with regards to him, maybe his connection's more transactional, obviously, because his mother's put him there for getting my good side. But then after a while, there's a tenderness between the two of them, and there's a sort of a connection, a romantic connection, and they become a couple. So but yeah, I just think it was with a lot of help from Oliver as well. We had some dinners with Oliver, and he was we would talk about the connection between these two people, and yeah, we just sort of went from there. And but it was interesting when we met at the Nomad Hotel. Uh, Strangely enough, the Nomad Hotel used to be um, the magistrate court across from the Opera House, where a certain and the gentleman said, "By the way, can I show you something?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Come and let me show you this room." And one of the guys who worked in the hotel showed me this beautiful sort of palatial room, and I said, "Oh, this used to be a courtroom." He goes, "Yes, this was Bow Street's magistrate court. This is where Oscar Wilde was tried for being gay and
Wow.
found guilty." And I was like, "Oh, okay, wow." So you know, yeah, that was quite interesting, but Yeah, yeah, it was great fun working with Nick. He's a real talent, and he's funny and sweet and charming, and he's a friend. Subsequently we become pals. But you know, we're constantly joking with each other on set, which I think so was Julianne. Everybody was like having a laugh, which I think helps the day go smoothly, go quicker, and also it's just more fun. You turn it on when the cameras are rolling, but when they stop rolling, we always had a laugh, and I think that kept it sort of fresh and fun on set. Yeah.
Well, it breaks the ice, especially when there's a lot of sex. And like when I was talking to Oliver, the director,
Yes.
when I was talking to Oliver, the director, he said like nudity aside, because there's a lot of that, but he's like, what was maybe the most uncomfortable for everyone was these houses where they're like hundreds of years old and you couldn't like bring water in or anything. I think DC Moore told me he got like in a lot of trouble for bringing in a Diet Coke one day. And they couldn't like spritz you down, so like everyone's like dry trying to film these
Yeah.
scenes. They have to keep
Yeah.
trying to make it look like you're
Yeah.
sweating.
Yeah. It was definitely dry post-coital. I did a in fact I just did an interview last week, and there was one I did for The Guardian a while back, but the headline was King James and his very dry orgy. Because one of the scenes I did blindfolded was in a 14th century manor house, and there was no liquids allowed in, no spray, no spritz. So after being blindfolded, and Nick, you don't see him because he's covered up, playing the viola da gamba, and having an orgy with five other chaps. It was like a Caravaggio painting, that was quite it was that it wasn't much moisture afterwards, but it was funny because I run quite a bit and I train and stuff, and I've been training a lot last year or the year before. I hadn't been drinking. I didn't drink last year at all, and I was in pretty good shape. But then when I found out I was doing Mary and George, I thought, right, I'm not going to start eating pies and drinking Guinness, but I didn't work out as much because I thought I don't want to. Not that I look like Magic Mike, but I thought I don't want it to look all cut as as this king. And then of course when I everybody went returning, and all the actors took their robes off and were completely naked. I looked at them all and I was like, you bastards. All these guys looked incredible. They'd all been like, oh, I'm going to be naked. They were completely ripped. And I was this pudgy wee king. But no, it was good fun.
Yeah,
It was
opposite
quite,
opposite
it
approach.
was fun. Yeah.
And I have to talk a little bit about, because anytime we mention Outlander at Gold Derby, people lose their minds. I mean, the numbers just go through the roof. So we'll do you a favor,
Yeah.
us a favor. You're in Blood of My Blood, the prequel, which is also on Starz. So another plug for Starz. There's some great stuff on Starz. So everyone watching out there, get Starz.
Mm,
I mean, I love this. Mary and George is
yes.
fantastic. Outlander, and now we're getting Blood of My Blood. Talk about who you play and give us the tease that you can give us.
Yeah. And Outlander, Blood of My Blood, it's a prequel. So the original show was set in 1945, Second World War, and 1745, which is in Scotland and England, and Jacobite Revolution back in Scotland, 1745. Our show goes back to 1715 and 1915. So it's like in England, it's like or in Europe, it's the First World War, 1915, and then it goes back to Scotland in 1715, and it's kind of if you can call it an origin story, but it's basically about Claire and Jamie's parents. It goes back to where they were from, how they were conceived, if you will. And and I play a character called Lord Lovett, who and my son is Lord Lovett, Simon Fraser, and my son is Brian Fraser, who also happens to be the father of Jamie Fraser. So I guess, does that make me his grandfather? The striking resemblance, of course. Sam Huygens, like, what are you talking about? But so, well, I met him the other day in Glasgow. Actually, he's in good form. Season 8. He must be tired, but no. And so basically, my character is a bit of a Machiavellian chap. He was a real man. Uh, he did live. Simon Fraser, Lord love it. He in their story, he's lost some of his lands and his title, and by all means necessary, Lord Lovett is going to try and get them back. There's the Mackenzies, the Grants, other clans who are involved, and our story basically revolves around a bit of time travel again, um, uh, going back and forth through these two time periods, and meeting some, some incredible new characters that are that we've never met before, that all preceded the characters that are in Outlander, you know. So, and you're going to meet some, some fantastic, and a lot of the storylines that we have aren't attached to the original storyline because they came from Diane's novels,
Oh.
So, Blood of My Blood is has carte blanche, if you will, to go in any way which direction it pleases. So, and hopefully we don't fuck it up.
I doubt that's
I have seen trailers now. I have seen trailers. I have seen a little something, and it looks good. There you go.
Wherever you're working, I'm watching. Mary and George,
it looks good.
Such a fantastic series. It's binge worthy for all the right reasons. And congratulations!
Oh, thank you.
I really hope this gets some Emmy love. So Emmy voters, watch Mary and George, and you're gonna fall in love with it. And then we'll all look out for Blood of My Bloods. Tony, it's been a pleasure.
So nice to meet you, man, and thank you for all your sweet words. I really appreciate it, pal. Take care.